early Bond movies with like gimmicks and gadgets, then like real modern-day criminals. You know, they're tough, they're mean, they're violent. Do you think that's the way that Bond villains are going to have to head to be more realistic, to keep up with the current trending action movies?
Yeah, I think people expect, you know, the villains to be much more credible these days. You know, they want to see a history behind the character. They want to know where he's come from and why he's behaving in the way he does. And I think with the character I'm playing, you know, there is a history behind him. He has got a grudge to bear.
Hello, James.
What an unpleasant surprise.
I always wanted to be a bad in a Bond movie. In fact, I mean, when I was 16, I used to go and watch Bond movies and run around the street doing all this stuff, you know, and all that, and had a grey polo and I used to wear under a blue jacket and thought I was dead cool. But actually, I always wanted to be the bad guy. I wanted a big set, you know, and do all that stuff with the... Come in, Mr. Bond, sit down. Don't worry about the sharks, they have been fed. All that stuff.
Walther PPK. 7.65 millimeter. Only 3 men I know use such a gun. I believe I've killed 2 of them.
Lucky me.
Xenia Onatopp is her name.
Xenia Onatopp.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's on a top, what does she do?
Oh, she just likes to squeeze men between her thighs.
Is this a characteristic you share with the character?
Yeah. I didn't have to dig very deep for that one.
She's a nasty piece of work.
Yeah, she is.
But she enjoys that work.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think there's probably a message for all of us there.
Yeah, I mean, can you relate to that?
Well, I think the children watching can.
Yeah.
Name's Bond. James Bond.
Xenia Sergeyevna Onatopp.
Onatopp?
Onatopp. She just gets them in intimate positions and then she crushes their rib cages.
Kind of like a nutcracker.
Mm-hmm.
Quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
My name's still Ross, Jonathan Ross, and I'm still in search of James Bond. But what is Bond himself in search of? Truth? Honour? Spiritual fulfilment? I'm sure he is. But it seems to me that Tasty Totty has always been pretty high on his list of mission priorities. This side to his character has been celebrated for many years by Hugh Hefner, the founder of Playboy magazine. I've decided to visit Hef, purely in the line of research, of course. Hef, I know that Playboy magazine and you personally have been fans of the whole Bond phenomenon for many years. In fact, I believe that you first started serializing the Bond books before the movies even appeared.
That's true. The first Bond story appeared in 1960.
What was it that attracted you to Bond?
Well, it was a kind of a natural connection. The gadgetry, the girls, and, you know, the adventure. And it has been a very good, long-running relationship. I saw Dr. No. It was the first film we ever ran at the Mansion in Chicago. And in the films, there was an interconnection also. In other words, Ian Fleming very early said that James Bond would be a Playboy reader.
You just killed James Bond.
Is that who it was?
Do you think that the Bond will always be associated with the 60s as one of those key things? There was Playboy, there were the Beatles, there were the Rolling Stones, I guess, and there was James Bond.
I think so. You know, I think that whatever came thereafter was still a variation on the theme.
It was an enormous success and very difficult to manage and handle. I mean, at the same time as the Beatles, more or less, and they had 4 of them to share it and get in and out with, and I was stuck, as it were, on my own, hoisted my own petard, as it were.
So live or live, die. Live or live, die. Live or live, die. Let it die. Live or live, die.
I sat down and just started. I actually just worked backwards from the title. In my mind, I thought, okay, we've got to end up, so therefore, live and let die. So this first bit's got to be about live and let live. Well, when you were young, you used to say that, But now you've changed your attitude to the whole world because you're James Bond now, and now you say that. Nah. So I sort of worked it like that. So when you were young, and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let, you know. So I just worked it backwards.
Live and let die. Live and let die. Live and let die. Let it die. Live and let die.
In a way, when I think of the 60s, which I do surprisingly often, I think of the Beatles and I think of James Bond, and it did seem that they were kind of two of the greatest exports we had. Were you aware of that? Did it feel like you were sort of...
At the time, I wasn't conscious of it, but looking back on some of the things I did, I must have been conscious of it. Because, I mean, I immediately got an Aston Martin, and I'd never actually connected it till I saw Goldfinger. It was exactly the model I got.
You'll be using this Aston Martin DB5 with modifications. Now, pay attention, please. Windscreen bulletproof, as are the side and the rear windows. Revolving number plates, naturally.
Well, I never thought it was such a great car myself. I found the pedals too tiny. It's like a lady's car. I thought it was an elegant-looking car, and I remember in Switzerland. But I think that its setting in the story and in the film gave it a more unique quality than the car actually possessed.
Anything else?
Well, I won't keep you for more than an hour or so if you give me your undivided attention. We've installed some rather interesting modifications.
It was just the times, and it was so glamorous. And talk about pulling birds. You know, would you like to come for a ride in my DB5? All right, I'll come. I have no idea why they're Scottish, these birds, but...
Sounds to me like you were just
Sean,
trying to pick up the female half of the Crankies there. Let me ask you about the cars in the film, because when Bond fans have exhausted the Sean Connery, Roger Moore debate, if they're sad examples of Bond admirers, they move on to what was the best car, the Lotus or the DB5. Do you have a preference?
DB5.
Yeah?
Yeah. And it's in the movie now, in the beginning of the movie. I drive a Ferrari and we chase, do a car chasing scene.
You know, see, how does that happen? Because the DB5 would not stand a chance against a Ferrari in real life.
I know, but James Bond is driving it.
So you're just a very bad driver?
No!
Is it because
I'm
you're a woman
actually
driver?
really good. I'm just giving him I'm pretending that, you know, he's fast.
You want him to catch you?
Yeah. You know, I want to sort of play with him. You don't need the gun, Commander.
That depends on your definition of safe sex.
How do you think the female roles in the new movie compare to those in previous Bond films?
Well, I think they have far improved, and all the women in the movie today, they're all women on a mission, women with an agenda, women who know what they want, and I think that my character resembles James Bond a lot, actually. And I really wanted that part, but Pierce snagged it away from me.
Maybe they could have, you could have been Jane Bond.
I wanted to be Jane Bond. I did.
Now when we look at movies, you see a lot of tough female characters. I mean, it's a sort of a given in films these days. Back then, I imagine when it
I was
first
the
appeared...
first.
Isn't it customary to grant the condemned man his last request?
You've asked for this.
It was a very liberating time for women. It was the beginning. I mean, the amount of mail I used to get from both men and women. Also, of course, I had the men who were really threatened by my character, who used to call me out for fights and things. And also my character, I think I was very lucky because she wasn't a bimbo. She was somebody with a job and somebody very effective in that job. And she saved the day, let's face it. And not many women are allowed to do